The story begins inside a gym where a couple of girls are staring at a guy who is running like a maniac on the treadmill. He looks to be in great shape, and these girls simply can't help but stare at him as they try to figure out if he is a celebrity. The guy in question is EM, who is trying to keep his heart rate down while his trainer screams at him to push himself as hard as he can. For some reason, he looks positively paranoid about his heart rate, and that's exactly why he keeps glancing at his fitness watch every couple of minutes. The women around him are mesmerized by his athletic physique, and they are talking about how they would like to devour him like a medium-rare steak. But this is when out of nowhere the watch begins to show that EM's heartbeat has gone past its normal limit. As soon as he sees this, he immediately stops the machine, even though his trainer is practically begging him to keep going on. He tells her that he's done as he slowly starts walking to the locker room to cool off. He seems completely oblivious to all the women who are staring at him with drool coming out of their mouths. Now, this kind of situation would be a dream come true for every one of my gym brothers, but for some reason, our protagonist looks extremely disappointed. All his life, he has received an insane amount of attention from the ladies, but instead of making him happy, this unwanted attention only makes his life harder. I'm sure you're wondering why that is, and there's a good reason for it. You see, our boy simply can't get close to a beautiful girl anymore because he might just end up breaking his heart. And I mean that literally, because despite his alpha male appearance, EM has a beta heart that just cannot function under any kind of stress. Our protagonist found out about this chink in his armor pretty early on in his life, and in high school his classmate used to kick him around and call him weak because of it. Once they messed him up so bad that he thought his heart was going to explode. His tormentors left him in that state to die, but that's when a girl showed up there like a shining knight and saved him before he could kick the bucket. She put his head in her lap and told him to calm down by taking long and deep breaths. It didn't take long for EM to come back to his senses, but he only got more excited the moment he took a good look at his savior's beautiful face. He told her to stay away from him because he would die if he got too excited. But to his surprise, that's when the girl looked up at him with a smile on her face and said that his body wasn't weak at all, and it was actually his mind that was keeping him in the dumps. At the time, EM didn't really understand her words. Instead, our boy tried his absolute best to live as normally as he could despite his weak heart, but this physical impediment never failed to remind him of his limits. This was especially true during his last relationship, when he would have to keep an eye on his heart rate even while he was in bed with his girlfriend. As you can guess, the girl didn't really appreciate his nervous and confused attitude, and it wasn't long before she just gave up on him. After she left, EM decided that it was probably for the best because clearly he couldn't be in a normal relationship with the threat of an unexpected heart attack looming over his head. After reminiscing about this haunting past, our boy starts thinking that if he really wants to become the mythical Alpha Chad, he would have to do something about his heart. He's wondering what he can do about it when all of a sudden a girl bumps into him and his smartwatch falls out of his hand. To make matters worse, it gets stuck in the door of an elevator. As you can guess, this is the worst case scenario for our protagonist because he feels like he has no control without his watch. He's trying to get it out when the girl turns around and tries to help him. She's clearly feeling sorry about putting him in this situation, but she can't do anything as the elevator door closes and she vanishes alongside EM's watch as he stands there feeling helpless. He doesn't think that he'll be getting that watch back, so he decides to just go home and cry himself to sleep. Unfortunately, that might be harder than he expected because it turns out he can't even drive without his watch. Like most drivers, he does feel a little nervous about going through packed streets, and he's afraid that he might end up dying because of a panic attack. Without his watch, he won't even know that his heart rate is going through the roof, so for him it's like driving on a rough country road with no headlights. But even in this tough situation, EM's mind keeps reminding him of the girl from earlier, and that's making his heart race a little. He tries his best to get her out of his head, so he starts scrolling through the phone to see if he can buy a new watch from a nearby store. It doesn't take long for him to learn that he can't buy a new one since most stores are closed for the night, but he can still try finding a used one. Lucky for him, someone is selling a somewhat new fitness watch, and they aren't very far away from him either. This gives our protagonist some hope, and he quickly contacts the seller, who simply reads his message and doesn't respond. Now usually our boy would take this as a no and stop bothering this person, but he's in a pinch and he really needs that watch, so he keeps texting the seller. While he's trying to figure out why this person isn't replying, the seller is actually feasting on his girlfriend in his car. He keeps receiving EM's messages, and he is wondering why someone is trying so desperately to buy his watch at this time of the night. These notifications are ruining his mood, so he just picks up his phone and replies to our boy and sets up a meeting. After realizing that he might be able to buy a new watch, EM is over the moon, and he decides to meet up with the seller as soon as possible. In fact, he gets to the meeting spot ahead of time, and after a few minutes, he can see a huge dude coming his way while he stands under a bridge on the side of the road. This guy doesn't really look friendly even with that huge grin on his face, and that's probably why EM is feeling a little on the edge. He wants to buy the watch and get out of there, but the big guy is giving him a hard time. He doesn't even want to show our protagonist the watch before receiving the money. Our boy, of course, is not okay with that, but he can't really argue with this domesticated orc, so he just takes out 600,000 won from his purse and hands it over to the man, who gives EM the watch. It looks okay, and since he isn't really in a position to ask for a refund, our boy just decides to get out of there as the seller once again runs towards his girlfriend to finish the job. Now it's been a really weird and troublesome evening for EM so far, and to make matters worse, he is starting to hate his latest purchase. Sure, the watch seems to work, but it looks off-brand, and our protagonist is thinking that he just wasted a ton of money on it. He is cursing his luck as he walks through the streets when out of nowhere, he runs into his trainer Ari, who looks rather surprised. She asks him what's wrong, and after thinking for a while, EM decides to make up a lame excuse. He tells her that he's just hungry and feeling a little exhausted. This brings a smile to the girl's face, and she asks him to join her for dinner if he is starving. Our boy can't really say no to her, and he will have to eat something anyway, so he decides to join her. However, he soon comes to regret this decision because it turns out that this night is about to get even weirder. As he sits down on the table with Ari, he accidentally falls from his chair, and while getting up he notices a girl's panties. This is when the middle schooler inside him comes out and he starts getting excited. Usually in these scenarios, his watch would remind him that his heart rate is getting out of control and that maybe he should just calm down a little. This time around, however, his new watch for some reason starts telling him that his fishing pole is getting ready for some action. As far as EM knows, no watch should keep track of that, but this one apparently even knows how ready he is. According to the watch right at this moment, he is half ready to go the distance with any girl who's willing to join him. As soon as the watch announces this, Ari looks down at him to see what is going on. Embarrassed by the situation, our protagonist immediately gets back up and pretends as if nothing happened. He's hoping that his companion didn't hear all of that, and he's also wondering why this feature even exists in a fitness watch. He is lost in his thoughts when all of a sudden Ari asks him if he really is 40% ready to get into some action. This is when EM realizes that his companion heard everything and he nearly chokes on his food from sheer embarrassment. He doesn't want her to think that he's some kind of a weirdo, but it might be too late for that. Still, he has to make up an excuse, so he tells her that his friend set up his watch to prank him. Of course, the girl doesn't really believe his story, but she doesn't want to interrogate him at that moment, so she continues eating in awkward silence. Later that night, the two of them are walking to their homes when they realize that they both live in the same neighborhood. This is surprising for Ari since she has known our boy for at least a year, and she didn't even know where he lived. While they're walking, EM compliments her by saying that she's very good at keeping her composure. He's not wrong because any girl would have freaked out after hearing what his watch just announced earlier. Ari tells him that she might look calm from the surface, but in reality, she has a tendency to lose control over her emotions whenever she gets excited. That's exactly why she tries to suppress her own feelings and pretends to be a rather calm and collected person. She's talking about it when all of a sudden she notices that EM's shoulders are pretty stiff. Being his trainer, she believes it's her responsibility to keep him in the best shape possible, so she drags him to a park to give him a quick workout. Now pull your mind out of the gutter because it's not going to be that kind of a workout, or at least that's what she believes once she starts stretching his upper body to relax his muscles. It's actually working and our boy is feeling much better, but such close proximity to a beautiful woman just turns on his brain, and he can't help but feel excited every time she squeezes him. This time around, however, his weird watch doesn't really start announcing his devilish intentions. Instead, it starts analyzing Ari to find out what she's into. Then all of a sudden our boy hears a beeping sound, and he finds out that his watch is turning on a helper mode without even his permission. He doesn't know what this special mode is, and he's a little scared that it will do something extremely embarrassing. He's thinking about it when out of nowhere Ari asks our protagonist to pull her shoulders so he can learn how to properly stretch his muscles. EM is really hesitant, but he's trying his best to act normal, so he listens to her as carefully as he can. His trainer is doing some rather strange movements, and they are only making our boy more excited. He's trying to keep a straight face when once again his watch beeps and tells him to gently massage her shoulders. Without even thinking about it, EM starts rubbing Ari's shoulders, and to his surprise, she's actually feeling pretty good. She's trying to ask him why he certainly started to give her a massage when the watch beeps again and tells our boy to rub his trainer's temples and neck. By this point, the girl is feeling so great that she isn't even questioning his actions. This allows EM to follow the third step without any resistance, and he starts to massage her lower back, and this turns out to be the final straw. These seemingly unrelated actions are making Ari feel so great that she doesn't even know what to think anymore. By the time our boy is done, his trainer has lost all control over her emotions, and she starts to undress in front of him. She is so out of it that she doesn't even realize that they're in a public park. Eventually, she comes back to her senses and decides to drag our boy to a little slide in the back. No one is going to see them there, and it's for the best because Ari has some rather naughty intentions and she doesn't want to back out. It's not long before the two of them start making out, and even though he likes it, EM is trying to find a way to get out of the situation. Unfortunately for him, his trainer is pretty strong and she won't let him leave just yet. While Ari is getting ready to ride the St. George, our protagonist starts thinking about how they even got to this place. This is when he remembers that it all escalated when he began following the instructions from his watch. Maybe the watch really is able to accurately calculate someone's emotional state, and that would make it extremely valuable. Our boy is wondering who even made this strange device when they hear a bunch of people coming to the park and they have to keep it down if they don't want to get caught. And oh boy, they really don't want to get caught right now. Things are going great for EM, but he can't help but think about how crazy this scenario is. Even though he looks like a K-pop star, no girl has ever dragged him like this before, so he is feeling pretty nervous. He's also not sure if it's good to get this excited because he might just end up dying in the next few minutes. According to his watch, his heartbeat is as normal as it can get, but our boys still don't trust it enough to bet his life. So instead of enjoying this moment, he just tries to control his own emotions, and this does not leave a good impression on Ari. To make matters worse, the two of them almost get caught by a couple of women who are also there to find a quiet place. Luckily, things go as well as they could, and the two of them spend a really romantic evening together. The next morning, our boy is trying to figure out how this watch was able to predict everything that happened during his romantic encounter with Ari. He already knows that it's made in China, and now he's trying to use his engineering skills to find out what kind of technology it's using. He connects it to his work computer and starts going through the data files to get any clues, and this is when he notices something really strange. The watch is apparently keeping records of his heart rate and pretty much everything else about him. However, that's not even the strangest part. To EM's surprise, the watch has also made a record for Ari, which shouldn't even be possible since she never really wore it. He's trying to figure out how the watch was able to collect data from his trainer when all of a sudden his colleague Duna grabs the mouse and says that she'll help him figure out this problem. She's obviously just joking around, but our protagonist knows that he simply cannot let her see what's inside that folder, so he freaks out and grabs the mouse from her hand before telling her to keep her mittens away from his PC. His tone is pretty rude because of his nervousness, but the lady doesn't mind it and tells him that she's more than happy to help her team leader, even on his personal projects. The two of them don't know it yet, but the watch has already made a folder for her as well, and it's starting to collect data about her. While the gadget is busy being a creep, Duna is having fun pulling EM's cheeks. It's pretty clear that she likes him and she enjoys teasing him, but our boy is not so into it. Sure, he finds her to be really cute like pretty much every guy in their office, but he also thinks that she can be a little too forward at times with him. He's thinking about telling her to stop this when Duna gets the hint and she tells him that she won't be bothering him anymore today, so he should just go back to fixing his mysterious folder. As she walks away, EM can't help but appreciate how pretty she is, and he makes a mental note to stay on his toes around her, or he might end up doing something that he'll regret later on. That night, our boy is sitting outside his apartment building and drinking all by himself when he receives a call from his friend Do-hee, who tells him to stop acting like an old drunk and go home. EM, however, doesn't want to end the night just yet, and he asks her to have a drink with him, but she says that she has to wake up early so he should just go home and hit the bed. Unfortunately for her, our protagonist isn't really thinking straight right now, and he just starts banging on her door and begging her to come out for a drink. She tells him to stop acting like a madman because she really isn't in the mood for his shenanigans, but that's when she hears a thud noise from outside. Worried that he might be hurt, she looks through the peephole to see that he is collapsed on the floor. She wants to go help him, but she's not really wearing any pants, so she thinks about calling 911. Eventually, she opens the door to ask him if he needs help, and that's when EM just gets up and asks her what she would like to drink. After realizing that her friend played a prank on her, Do-hee loses her school, and she grabs our protagonist by the neck to teach him a lesson. She really got afraid that he was hurt, and that's probably why she's feeling so angry right now. She's holding him in a chokehold while he's telling her to calm down or he will pass out. To save himself, he picks her up on his shoulder and takes her into her apartment to show that he's not a skinny little kid anymore. However, this is when he notices that his best friend isn't wearing any pants, and this realization instantly sobers him up. While he's getting excited after seeing her like this, his watch is collecting data about his friend. Do-hee, on the other hand, is telling him to put her down if he doesn't want to lose a limb tonight. Our boy, however, is not in the right headspace, and he fails to remember why messing with her is like playing with a rattlesnake. By the time he tries to think what he should do, Do-hee just kicks him between the legs and knocks him out before telling him to go home if he doesn't want to die. She's already feeling embarrassed about him seeing her like this, but at that moment EM is more worried about his own future because after that kick he might not have one anymore. The next morning he is on his way to have lunch with his colleagues at his boss's home. He is still feeling the repercussions of his actions from last night, and he's thinking about how he'll take revenge on Do-hee for using such an underhand trick to take him down. He is also extremely curious about how his watch works, because so far he simply cannot understand how it can make such accurate predictions. He believes that the guy who made it has to be a Reddit mod, because only those guys can know so much about this stuff. He is busy playing around with his watch when suddenly Duna grabs his arm and asks him what's so special about his new gadget. As soon as she touches him, the watch sends out a notification telling EM that he is now in prime position to take her home. In fact, it even wants our protagonist to start following its steps if he wants to have a chance with Duna, but our boy is not in the mood for that. He frees his hand and immediately starts running towards the bathroom, leaving Do-hee pretty confused. While our protagonist is busy trying to calm his nerves, the boss brings all his employees to his home, which also happens to be a daycare facility. There he learns that his wife has hired a new teacher named Yun for the children. Apparently, the girl is pretty good at keeping kids in check, and right now she's trying to teach a young boy how to go to the toilet all by himself. Unfortunately, the kindergartner is a cowboy and he runs out of the toilet and she has to chase him down. This is when she runs headfirst into EM, who is still in the restroom. The two of them fall down and Yun immediately starts apologizing for being an airhead. After collecting her thoughts, she realizes that the two of them have met before, and last time she ended up destroying EM's precious fitness watch. It appears that she has a tendency to cause problems for him. However, she's not all bad, and she says that she has been looking for him ever since that day because she wanted to apologize to him. Our boy tells her that it's not a big deal because he found a new watch, and in his heart, he knows that it was the best purchase of his life. So he doesn't really want her to pay him back, but he does want her to get off him because he hasn't eaten anything yet, and he's not too fond of laying on the floor of a public toilet. The girl also remembers she has to catch the kid, and as it turns out, her new employer is also calling for her. So she just says sorry and runs towards the house, leaving our boy confused. He doesn't understand why she always causes problems for him. He's starting to believe that she might be the villain of his story, but she clearly is too cute to be a villain, and that's probably why our boy is feeling a little excited right now. He's wondering how he can even feel this way in a place like this, and even more surprisingly, why his watch hasn't given him instructions about this girl as well. Usually, the watch starts analyzing people the moment they get in contact with our protagonist, but this time around it seems to be asleep or something. Later that evening, Do-hee gets off work and decides to have some drinks with Eam because she feels a little bad about last night. So she goes to the convenience store, buys a bunch of drinks, and runs back to meet up with her goofball friend. She thinks that she will not show any kind of nervousness around him to re-establish her dominance, and with this positive attitude, she starts climbing the long stairway towards the building. She's not the only one who wants to hang out tonight, and our protagonist is also hoping to catch her because he still has to get his revenge, so he's making plans about how he's going to get back at her. As he approaches his door, he realizes that the lights in the hallway are still not working, so he can't really see that well. Still, he manages to notice the silhouette of a beautiful girl right outside his apartment, and he thinks it has to be Do-hee, who's just trying to play another prank on him. He is feeling smug as he realizes that this might be his best chance to turn the tables on her, so he decides to scare her in the dark. Unfortunately for him, the plan backfires as the girl turns out to be Yun. She is obviously shocked by his sudden appearance and accidentally spills some coffee on him. It doesn't take long before Eam starts feeling a burning sensation below the belt, and he starts jumping off like a wild animal. Yun is of course mortified by what just happened, and she immediately gets on her knees and tries to wipe off the hot coffee from our protagonist's clothes. But this turns out to be a very wrong move because we all know that it doesn't take long for our boy to get excited. He tries his best to make her stop, but she says that they'll have to clean up all the coffee or he might get burnt. While this innocent girl is busy cleaning stains from Eam's pants, his friend enters the apartment building and goes straight towards his door. The lights are off, so she can't see well either, but she does manage to notice that her friend is standing in the hallway and there's a girl kneeling in front of him. As you can guess, she immediately believes that our boy is up to no good, and she doesn't want to disturb him, so she just hides without making any noise. She never knew that her friend had so much rizz, and she doesn't want to get caught in a situation like this, so she decides to get out of there. While Do-hee is trying to wrap her head around what she just saw, Yun finally stops cleaning the stains when she notices something big staring her in the face. She immediately realizes the mistake she made, and she apologizes profusely for it. Eam, on the other hand, can't even speak because he's feeling extremely embarrassed, but he also finds her airheadness to be rather cute. He asks her what she's doing there, and she explains that she moved into this building only yesterday, and she was just distributing greeting cakes to all her neighbors. She wasn't really looking for him, but it turns out she is like a guided missile, and no matter where our boy goes, she just manages to find him and mess him up in one way or another. By this point, Eam is starting to believe that she might be the angel of death, and one of these days, she's just going to off him accidentally by pushing him on a highway. He is not only frustrated about getting burnt, but he's also feeling strange because he got excited for no reason whatsoever. In order to hide his embarrassment, he runs back into his apartment after telling Yun to just leave him alone for now. She understands why he would act like this, and she even berates herself for being so out of sorts lately. The next day, Eam's boss is having lunch in the daycare along with his wife and his employees when she asks him where our boy is. The boss explains that our protagonist isn't feeling too well, so he decided to skip lunch and eat a snack. Yun happens to overhear this, and she immediately starts thinking that he might be avoiding her because of what happened last night. After a little while, she is in the kitchen when Duna comes over and asks if she can get some food to go. The boss and his wife usually don't allow it, but Yun lets her grab a box of food as she leaves. While everyone is enjoying their lunch, our boy is busy trying to clean up some code in his office. He has been really busy today, so he is eating rice cakes to fill himself up. This is when he remembers that his watch once again didn't show any notifications when he ran into Yun last night. This is highly unusual, and he is starting to believe that he might have broken his miraculous gadget. He's thinking about it when he hears a muffled scream coming from the storage room. Of course, he quickly goes there to check what's going on, and that's when he finds Duna, who apparently fell and hurt herself. He asks her what she's doing there, and she explains that she was just trying to bring him some lunch because she heard that he'd been eating rice cakes. However, she didn't really want others to know about it, so she was being a little sneaky as she entered the office, but this is when she tripped and fell on her butt. She has a little wound on her knee, and she asks her team leader to do something about it. However, he has never really given anyone first aid, so he has no idea about how to help her. Lucky for him, his watch isn't really broken, and it immediately tells him that in 5 seconds he will receive precise instructions about what he should do. He's confused after seeing this notification, and Duna believes that he's just nervous, because this is the first time he has managed to get this close to her. She's not wrong, and there are definitely some rather nefarious things going through our boy's mind, and his watch is there to make all of his naughty dreams come true. It tells EM where to press in order to make her feel relaxed. Now, usually, our boy would have stopped himself before following any of these instructions. He knows better than anyone else that this path only leads to one place, but today he has decided that he's going to show his junior colleague just how insanely charming he can be. He starts following those instructions meticulously, and as he starts pressing Duna's thighs, she begins to feel emotions she has never felt before. She doesn't understand what's going on with her body, and before she can do anything about it, our boy is ready to start the next phase. Thanks to his watch, he knows that Duna has never gone all the way with a guy before, and he doesn't fail to mention it to her. This only makes her more excited, and by now she is ready to start rolling around in the hay with him. The two of them start making out, and they end up spending the rest of the lunch break having a rather good time. During this amorous congress, Duna asks our protagonist if he's just going to ignore her once again from tomorrow. He tells her that he doesn't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but they're not going back to just being two colleagues ever again. She doesn't really know what to make of this answer, but she tells him that she has always felt a strange attraction to him, even though she hasn't yet fallen for him. At the end of their pole dance session, EM immediately stares at his watch to check his heart rate, and to his surprise, his heart is actually not beating any faster than normal. This is beyond strange because after this kind of activity, he would usually have trouble even standing up, but he feels as healthy as he has ever felt before. In order to find out what's going on with his body, he immediately visits the hospital and sees his doctor. The physician gives him a thorough checkup and is baffled by all the results. He explains to our protagonist that according to every single test, his heart is functioning pretty normally, which shouldn't be possible because of his condition. According to the doctor, this would only be possible if some machine was helping his heart pump at a normal pace, and this is when EM realizes just how amazing his new watch really is. It has not only been helping him get popular with the ladies, but it has also been keeping him alive. He is feeling so healthy that the stairway to his apartment building now feels like child's play to him, even though he used to nearly pass out every time he walked up there. He is feeling invincible tonight because he has finally become the Giga Chad he always dreamt of becoming. His victory celebrations, however, are interrupted when he gets hit in the head with an empty beer can. He immediately turns around to see Do-hee, who asks him why he is spouting all of this nonsense at night. EM has never seen her in her office dress, so he's a little mesmerized by her. He quickly shares with her what the doctor told him earlier and says that he is now strong enough to defeat her once and for all. His friend believes that he's just drunk because heart conditions don't just disappear like that. She is telling him to stop acting like a fool before he hurts himself when he gets close to her, and tells her that he got better after receiving a supernatural item. He even shows her the watch and says that he is feeling so strong because of it. Duna is surprised by this revelation, but our boy is ready to share even weirder stuff with her. He straight up tells her that this watch is like a portable love guru, and it can read hearts and emotions in an instant. That's why she shouldn't really fall for him, because he will find out. With a shocked expression on her face, Duna gets close to him and asks if the watch also told him about what's going to happen next. In his drunk state, EM just blurts out the word, "What?" without even thinking about it. He once again sobers up pretty quickly when he receives yet another kick to his crown jewels. His friend tells him to just go home and sleep it off because other people might just believe his nonsense if he keeps saying things like this with a straight face. Her tone, however, changes when she notices a notification on the watch that pretty accurately explains how much she weighs and what she's wearing under those clothes. She doesn't understand how this gadget knows all of that, and these notifications are getting more and more embarrassing. Eventually, she gets so frustrated and embarrassed that she kicks our boy a second time and runs back to her apartment after stealing his manhood. The next morning, EM is in the gym and thinking about his violent friend and her actions from last night. He's wondering why she goes berserk like that every time he tries to tease her. His thought train, however, gets derailed when he hears a familiar voice from the adjacent room. He goes up there to see Ari, who is talking to someone on the phone. She is apparently talking to a close friend because she admits that she hooked up with one of her clients the other day. EM, of course, knows that she's talking about him, and for a moment he feels rather proud about it. His smugness, however, disappears when she tells her friend how it was a rather disappointing experience because the guy simply didn't know what to do. She says that he looks great and has a lot going for him physically, but mentally he's not really good enough to make her happy. All these words are like daggers that are hitting EM straight in his weak heart. He's regretting ever going to the park with her when suddenly his watch tells him that if he wants, he can make her eat her words right now. Basically, the gadget is going to give him instructions to get revenge, and as you can guess, our boy is eager to get on with this plan. He goes back to the bench press rack and starts working out without paying any attention to Ari. Eventually, she notices him and comes over to say hello. She can see that he's pushing himself really hard, and she asks what changed because he used to be so scared about his health. EM tells her that he doesn't have to care about that anymore, and he is as fit as he is ever going to be. In fact, he says that he achieved this supernatural strength after that night in the park with her. This statement, of course, catches Duna off guard, and she straight up tells him that he was acting like a scared gazelle that night, so he shouldn't go bragging about it. She tells him to not push himself too hard before walking away, but this is when our boy starts the plan and grabs her from behind. She asks him what in the world he is doing, and he says that he is about to show her that he is not some scared herbivore. Instead, he is an apex predator, and he is about to devour her. And this is how this segment of the manga ends. If you want us to continue this story, make sure to write Duna in the comments down below.